All right, dear friends, let us get going. Last learning of Tanya for the year. Next time we learn, we'll be in a new year. So I want to, let me shut off my ringer. I want to wish all of you, as we begin, a Shana Tova. May God bless each and every single one of us personally with a tremendous year of success and of tremendous opportunities and just goodness and just goodness. We should be free from any worry, and we should have all the health and strength we need to do good and do even better, materially, spiritually, and to rock on. And God is giving all of His blessings, and we just need to take hold of them, grab onto them, activate them, bring them into our lives. And I just want to bless all of us, every single one of you, myself included, that we should see an amazing year. So that's my wish to you. L'chaim to that. And another successful year of learning Tanya. It's we're in this for the long haul, and it's really amazing. L'chaim. L'chaim means to life, which is what right? Okay. Before we begin today's class, I want to share with you a story, which is a pretty amazing story, and I think it will help reintroduce us to this chapter as we conclude this chapter, chapter 33. This was in the early 1960s, maybe 1961, 1962, and a small group from Montreal, Canada, they rented a bus. And they all made a little trip to visit the Rebbe. So they went. There was a senior Chabad Chassid in Montreal. His name was Rabbi Peretz Muchkin. Rabbi Peretz Muchkin was a pre-war Jew, a Jew from the shtetl. He didn't become any more Americanized. He didn't become any more Western when he moved to America. He's still walking around with a dirty, old, ripped up. I'm saying, he was a Jew, and he was poor. There's no bet, he wasn't financially well off. But the last time he bought himself a suit, he didn't even remember when he bought the suit. It was old, but he didn't care. But he came in to have a meeting with the Rebbe. And the group asked in advance of his office if they could have the opportunity to have a private audience with the Rebbe in honor of their little trip. They maybe came in for a Shabbos. Maybe it was a special occasion they came in for. Rabbi Peretz Muchkin, the senior chassid, he went over to another chassid and said, "Can I borrow your jacket? I don't want to go into the Rebbe with an old dirty jacket. So can I borrow your jacket?" Well, right after Rabbi Peretz Muchkin went into the Rebbe, a younger Chabad Chassid went to the Rebbe. And from the nature of the story, I'm going to guess that it was maybe somebody who wasn't, Chabad from birth. Maybe it was somebody who became more affiliated with Chabad. Because it's a little bit uncharacteristic for somebody who's born and bred Chassid to speak this way candidly to the Rebbe. Usually you were a lot more reserved speaking to the Rebbe. And he expressed to the Rebbe that he's a little bit disturbed. Okay. His name was David Tenenhaus. Maybe he went by David Tenenhaus. I'm not sure. I read the story in the Hebrew. It said David Tenenhaus. And he expressed himself to the Rebbe. He says, "I don't understand. Here you have a special elder Jew, Peretz Muchkin. He prays every day, he's Torah every single day. He's the real deal. And he's poor. He can't even afford for himself a new jacket. He wants to look like a half a mensch. He goes and borrows somebody else's jacket." And then he dropped a name. He dropped the name Marilyn Monroe. Here you have this young Hollywood celebrity riding the clouds, making $5 million a year in those days money. And look at her. She's happy. She's successful. And here's Peretz Muchkin, who deserves that wealth, and he's walking around. He could barely afford himself a new pair of shoes. Is that fair? Is this God's world? Interesting challenge for the Rebbe. He says, he expressed himself because this is what he just looked. He's seeing Peretz Muchkin looking for a new jacket. You're like, Interesting question to pose to the Rebbe. What does the Rebbe know about Marilyn Monroe? Okay. The Rebbe said like this. Regarding Peretz Muchkin, his interests are in much better things. Meaning, the Rebbe used the English expression "vuer licht," where his attention is, where his interests are. He's not looking about in how nice his jacket is. The Rebbe says, I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't even realize that he's wearing an old jacket, and even if he does, it doesn't bother him. And the Rebbe said, but Peretz Mushkin is a truly happy person. He's really happy. He's living with real joy. And the Rebbe says, on the other hand, this Hollywood actress you mentioned to me, she looks happy. She's deeply depressed, and she lives a miserable life. And the Rebbe says, with time you'll see. And indeed we know what happened to Marilyn Monroe, the celebrated actress, top of the list in Hollywood. She killed herself, right? Committed suicide in her own bedroom. What the Rebbe was telling him was, don't worry, the world is very fair. Peretz Muchkin, he looks like a loser. He's at the top of the world. He's living the most happiest life possible. Marilyn Monroe, you think she's so happy? She's miserable to the depth of her soul. So tell me, who's really living life? Now, why do I share through the story? I share through the story because, first of all, it's an amazing story. It's also pretty prophetic. This David Tannenhouse, he shares a story. It's like, he decided to drop that name to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe says, time will tell. Just watch and see, and you have that. That's pretty amazing. I want to share with you also something else. That this is this is totally off topic, but exactly 50 years ago. No, 40 years ago. Exactly 40 years ago. Bibi Netanyahu was then the UN ambassador. And he came to the Rebbe for Simchas Torah. Simchas Torah by the Rebbe was the day that his synagogue was most packed. To be with the Rebbe for Simchas Torah, I never had the merit to be there. But they say it was like heaven on earth. It was a whole different day. And Bibi Netanyahu, he visits the Rebbe, and he's there with another very important senior member of either Israeli politics or even, I think, of the army. A very important member of the Israeli defense team who's there visiting New York. And okay, Simchas Torah, let's go visit the Rebbe. And Bibi Netanyahu walks up to the Rebbe. He gets access to the front, and he says he taps the Rebbe on his shoulder. He walks up on the Rebbe's stage, and the Rebbe turns around, and he says, "It's Bibi Netanyahu. I came to see the Rebbe." And the Rebbe turns around and says, "Only to see, not to speak." He says, "All right, we could speak too." And for 40 minutes. The Rebbe stopped the procession publicly. The Rebbe, it's the middle of services, and the Rebbe spoke with these two members of the Israeli government and the Israeli defense team, a young Bibi Netanyahu, and the Rebbe spoke a lot about how Israel needs to defend itself, and specifically then fighting the Lebanon war. All right, this was shortly after the first Lebanon war, the failures of the first Lebanon war. For 40 minutes. Okay, now, Bibi Netanyahu, yeah, he's an important person. He wasn't prime minister then. He was a young guy. He was the representing Israel at the UN ambassador. Okay. You could say that his words were prophetic. Today, exactly 40 years later, Bibi Netanyahu is in a position of leadership, and the news reports were just that Israel is either actually entered or about to enter Lebanon, which is going to probably officially begin the third Lebanon war, which hopefully will be the last Lebanon war. There's no need for that to continue. Somebody who I know, who's part of our community here in Chabad Bloomfield Hills, joins the Tanya class. He calls me last Thursday afternoon, and he says, I was invited to join the exclusive Friday night Shabbat dinner with Bibi Netanyahu in New York City. So he just wanted to share that with me. So I asked him, is it going to be a small group? How intimate is it going to be? He says he has no clue. He got invited by somebody who's a big macher, and he says he's jumping on a plane to Manhattan. They're still not even 100% sure if Bibi Netanyahu is going to be joining them, because it's possible he has to rush back to Israel. Right now, according to plan, he's only going to be flying back Saturday night, but no one knows. So I told him that if he's there, that means that there's a reason why he's there, and he should share with Bibi that Bibi should not forget what the Rebbe told him. And one of the main messages of the Rebbe was that Israel must do everything and not stop for whatever it takes to defend the Jewish people and to defend our Holy Land. And Israel cannot at all whatsoever listen to world pressure. Israel has to withstand all world pressure, even from America. Not giving up, not budge a bit. World pressure does not help the security of the Jewish people. Only what the defense people tell us is needed to bring back security and peace to our Holy Land. And the Rebbe said that we think, okay, let's throw America a bone. We'll let them get a win. We'll give in to their pressure. The Rebbe says it doesn't work. The more you give in to pressure, the more they will demand of it. The pressure is only going to get worse. You just have to fully withstand that. And the Rebbe said you have to be in Lebanon. Don't pull out prematurely. You have to stay as long as necessary. We need complete security, not a show of force. No one cares about shows of force. Real, concrete victories and security for the Jewish people. So I asked this individual to do me a favor and to stand up and share this with Bibi Netanyahu, and ask him to please not forget that, and to encourage him to be strong and to listen to what the Rebbe told him to do. And Friday we all know what happened. Israel did an unbelievable, successful attack against Hezbollah headquarters, and it became very clear that Bibi Netanyahu was not going to be hanging around in New York for too much. So I texted him. I'm like, is your dinner still on? He's like, listen, we're here. The dinner's happening. We just don't know if he'll be there. Big chances he won't be there, but let's see. Okay. Shabbos ends, Saturday night. I give him a call. I say, what happened? You got to tell me what happened. Did he come? He says, yeah, originally we show up. The whole street is closed off. We go to where the dinner is. And originally everybody says, we don't know if he's going to come. His plane didn't leave yet. He didn't actually leave. But then he came. He did spend a few minutes at the dinner, and he says, I shook his hands and I told him that I gave him the spiel, and he said, yeah, he did not forget. He remembers very well what the Rebbe told him. That's what he told him. And when he flew into America. He arrived in New York Thursday afternoon. They went to their hotel. Not him, but his wife Sarah Netanyahu. Her first stop was the Rebbe's Ohel. She went to visit the Rebbe's resting place. She went with a few families of hostages to go pray there. But anyways, it's interesting little events. Okay, let's get back to the joy of this chapter. The Alter Rebbe told us the true joy of a Jew, not fake joy. There's no such thing as joy. Has to be real. There is fake pleasures in the moment. You could feel good in the moment. Real internal joy is something which is going to be deep and real lasting. And that comes from having something, first of all, real. It can't be fake. It can't be something transient. It has to be something really long lasting. It has to be that you possess something that really fills you with something really, really deep. And what the Alter Rebbe says is, when a Jew internalizes faith, it gives him a sense of connection and attachment and a closeness with God. You're in the same environment as God. You don't feel distant from God. God is not some abstract, theoretical, Kabbalistic concept, but God becomes a reality of your life, and you start living with your faith. The faith is something which you start living with. It's real. You live your life that way. You make your decisions that way. You feel it even when you go to the office. It's a real thing. The Alter says if we could tap into, through meditation, through contemplation, through learning and trying to connect with what we learn, the truth of God, we will have real joy. That's joy. The joy of you're living a different life. You're living a different life. You're living in the world as everybody else, but everybody else lives in the world. And it's a cruel world. No one knows what the hand of fate is going to give you. Either you'll be lucky, or you'll be a casualty of reality, of this dark, cruel world, whatever, But when you live with God, it's a different life. That's number one. But number two, says the Alter, it's even better. Not only do you feel not only that your quality of life changes, your quality of life goes up because you are experiencing your faith, you're experiencing a closeness with God. It goes even better. When you know that God wants you to do that, when you know that in fact the very purpose of all of creation is like that God could have a home in our world, in this world. How does God have a home in our world? It's very simple. We are that home. When we open up our doors, our minds, our hearts, and we literally allow God into our minds and into our hearts, into our consciousness, that is the definition of making a home for God. And that is actually our whole purpose. The purpose why we exist, the purpose why the world is here, is like that we can invite God in. And we do that by internalizing and connecting, bonding with our connection with God to the point that it's something which lives inside of us. God is literally living inside of us. It's a crazy concept. So the Alter says there's two elements of joy over here. The closeness of God and the joy of knowing that you get to host God. It's God wants to be with you. It's an amazing thing. You get to do that. You make a home for God. That's your purpose. That's your purpose. That's a spiritual purpose, why we exist. Which, by the way, this whole concept of making a home for God is going to be a massive topic in Tanya. Just hold your beer. We're almost there. Chapter 35, and we're going to hit the ground running with one of the biggest ideas of Tanya, of making a home for God and the cosmic plan, the purpose of everything. We got big stuff coming up. Okay, but in any case, the Alter now adds one little element at the end of the chapter. Take everything we've learned in the chapter, how amazing, the joy that you experience of living with your faith, and let's double it. Let's add another layer to it, which gives a whole new perspective to it. Oh, we got bugs again. A different bug. Okay. Remember last time? This room was a confess. It was weird. Okay. Page 250 in the handouts, part 3, God is rejoicing in you. Let's read. It says the Alter Rebbe, this is a doubled and redoubled joy. Aside from the soul's celebration of experiencing the closeness of God. That's right. That's one love. That's one celebration. Experiencing the closeness of God. And the joy of knowing that He dwells with you. There's yet another thing to doubly celebrate. What's this next thing? Page 251. Celebrate in God's joy and great pleasure that He receives through your faith in Him. Okay. Not only is this something you should be happy about, not only is this something which changes the quality of life that gives you a lot of joy and satisfaction and meaning, but the Alter Rebbe says, be happy as well that you are causing God joy and that you are causing God nachas. And by the way, that's the Hebrew word used here, nachas, which is such a beautiful idea if you think about it. Know that God has nachas from you. And as a parent, especially as my children slowly get older, it's something which I've come to appreciate. When my child comes home from school and they had a good day, they got a good mark on the test and they studied well and they just feel so good about themselves. As happy as they are that they had a good and fulfilling day, their lights shine by seeing and them knowing that they just caused you nachas, their parents, right? It's that sense of validation, and I don't know. It's the feedback loop. You know, Maimonides says that humans by nature are social creatures. Maimonides, before pop psychology was saying it, Maimonides said it. Ha'adam hu medini. He says a human by its very nature is a social creature. I think joy is the same way. We can have a joyful experience, but knowing that we cause somebody else joy in a certain way maybe even makes that joy even more special. It doubles it in a very special way. It's not like, oh, I'm happy. Oh, you're happy that I'm happy? Okay, good for you. I don't really care about you. I'm caring about me. No. When we know that you're happy because of me, I rejoice even more. The nachas. Alter Rebbe says, don't just be happy that you get a good experience, the closest with God. Rejoice that God is having nachas from you. And a Jew has to know that. A Jew has to know that God is proud of you and that God is happy. You're causing God joy. And Alter Rebbe says you have to know that and you have to experience that joy. Rejoice in God's joy. Okay, why is God happy? Says the Alter Rebbe explains. This is why he's happy. You see, by you consciously experiencing faith, you actually repel the negative force of Sitra Achra, and you transform spiritual darkness to light. Okay. Why is he happy? Because you are taking darkness, you're taking negativity, you're repelling the negativity, and you're transforming darkness to light. When a Jew internalizes their faith, we are repelling the force of Sitra Achra, and we're transforming darkness to light. And that is something which brings God a lot of joy. Okay, what does that mean? How is it that when I study about faith, study about God, internalize that to the point that I really connect with it and live with it, I'm repelling the forces of darkness? What does that mean? So let's read a little bit more. Let's see. We're talking about the darkness of the forces of Klippa that are present in this coarsely physical world. These darken and obscure his divine light in our world. This is the world's condition until the time comes for the darkness to end. As the verse says, he has set a time to darkness, right? There's a dark world. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. All right, parentheses. And this will be at the end of days. When is God going to end darkness? At the end of days, when Mashiach comes. When God will remove the spirit of impurity from the earth. And the glory of God will be revealed, and all flesh will see together, as will be explained below. All right, we're about to get all into the time of Mashiach. But here's the idea. Alter says, we live in a dark world. What does it mean we live in a dark world? Darkness means something is there and you can't see it. Right? We usually don't really know what utter darkness is. We're so full, our especially living in a city life. We don't really know what real darkness is. Real darkness means it's pitch black. You have zero clue what's happening. So you could have dark, it's a little bit dark, there's still some light, there's moonlight, there's starlights, and darkness means nothing. You have no clue. You're bumping your head all over. Which means there's a reality here, but you are totally tuned out from that reality. Imagine you live in a world where it never got light. Imagine you live in a world where you're 100% blind, you can't see anything. So you're blocked out of reality. That's the concept of darkness. So let's think about that. We live in a godly world. God didn't just create this world, God is present in our world. Our world is within God. And yet, let's just consider the fact, and how crazy it is, that in this world, we have zero natural intuition of God. It's an amazing thing. You look at a blade of grass, you see everything besides God. It's a crazy thing. If God is the truth of our reality, why do I never sense it? Why do I never feel it? If I wake up in the morning and my AC was turned off or broke in the middle of the night, the first thing I know is I'm going to feel hot, right? When I'm wet, I feel that I'm wet. I hear things. The world is constantly pushing its stimuli upon me. And the one thing we never, ever get is an acute sense of God's reality. That's a crazy thing. We live in God's reality, and we never get a sense of it. We live in a dark world. We live in a world that by design, the way God made it, the world is dark. We never get to truly experience. The world never gives us the opportunity to experience what it really is. If you look at a blade of grass and you see everything besides God, the truth is you're not really seeing it. Our senses are not actually properly understanding and sensing and perceiving the world we live in. The truth is in the pudding. Science has never came to a point which said, we studied something to the point that now we see God. The world is pointing us to God. Here's God. Science, it's an amazing thing. God is simply not here in our world. The world itself is totally out of touch with its divine identity. It's an amazing concept. In the world of angels, in the world of souls, in spiritual worlds, they wake up in the morning. Well, I don't know if angels wake up, but I don't know if they go to sleep. But an angel, the same way you smell things and you feel the temperature, they are aware of God. It's like a sense. It's the truth of reality. What do you mean? Well, you don't feel God. It's the truth. It's the world we live in. It's a God. God made it. God's here. We don't get to experience that. So we live in an utterly dark world. In a world of total darkness, in a world of disconnection, in a world of just disawareness, if that's even a word. We're just simply, we're not aware. We're out of touch. We live in a world of klipa. We live in a world that eclipses the truth of the world we live in. But let's think what happens then. So we live in a godless world. Not actually godless, but from the world's perspective, it's a godless world. But then here's a Jew who is walking on planet Earth. They're walking in the darkness. They're actually part of the darkness. We are human beings. We're made out of the world. We are the substance of reality. We eat the same food as everybody else. We walk the same streets as everybody else. We're part of life of the dark world. And we, all of a sudden, hack the system. We pierce through that darkness. We cut through it, and we allow the truth of God to shine in this world. We allow the truth of God to shine in our head, in our mind, and in our heart. All of a sudden, here's a Jew who is creating a radical transformation in this world. They're breaking the stranglehold of darkness. The whole world is dark, but here's a Jew walking on planet Earth, and God is alive and well and exists, and the truth is alive in this person. That's what, when we live with faith, that's what we're accomplishing. It's a very big deal. We're going into a place of darkness. We are members of that darkness, and somehow we broke through that darkness. We are repelling the darkness. We are transforming from the darkness to light. That is something which brings Hashem so much joy. All right, let's continue reading. That's what we're going to read over here. But through your faith, you pierce through that darkness, bringing the light of God's presence into this world. The Alter says, rejoice in that. Know that what you're doing is meaningful. Know that what you're doing is not only personally beneficial. This is this is a big deal. You're bringing God into this world. You're repelling that darkness. You're giving God a home. Do you know how happy God is because of this? Know that, says the Alter Rebbe. And just experience your own satisfaction and pleasure that you are causing God that nachas. Okay. It gets even better. The Alter Rebbe says, the fact that we don't live in Israel and the fact that we are living in really dark times makes this even better, because it makes what we do even more meaningful. Listen to what the Alter Rebbe says. This is especially meaningful outside of the land of Israel. It's even better that we're not in Israel. Why? For the ear of the lands of the foreign nations is spiritually impure. This is what our sages tell us. The land, the ear of Israel is holy. The ear of outside of Israel is not as holy. It's impure. So we are in a less spiritual environment. It's full of the negative forces of Klipa and Sitra Achra. Right? Have you ever felt that when you went to Israel? It's in the air. It's a special place. It's a holier place, right? You could feel, there's an energy. I don't know if it's, when I was 14, I spent the Shabbos in Jerusalem. I don't know. I really felt the air was different. I was like, you bring it in. I was like, it was a little bit connected to smell, but not really smell. I really felt like there's just a different atmosphere over here. Maybe I was making it up. Yes,
Rabbi,
Joe.
what is the difference between Kalipa and Sitra Achra?
Okay, that's a very good question. For the purposes of Tanya, let's just say it's the same thing. They are two Kabbalistic terms for the negative forces of darkness that eclipse God's presence. There are two definitions for the same thing, but we don't have to get into it right now. All right, but Israel is a land which naturally there's more holiness. In the diaspora, there's more darkness. So says the Alter Rebbe, guess what? Where do you think God is happier to have a Jew living with faith? In Israel or in the diaspora? Think about it. Well, where is it darker? It's darker in the diaspora. So when a Jew breaks through the darkness of the diaspora, that's a bigger deal. That's a bigger celebration. That's a bigger nachas. That's what the Alter Rebbe says now. So for God, there is nothing to celebrate more than the brightness and the joy of the most special light. That which is generated specifically from within the darkness. When the darker it is, the more special the light is. So the Alter Rebbe says, we're not living in the times of light, the days of glory. We're not living in the times of a holy temple. We're not living in Israel. And guess what? Which Jew, what does God appreciate more? The Jew that serves God in the holy temple and has all the opportunities, or the Jew who serves God in exile, outside of Israel, in the darkness, in the confusion, in the pain? Papa says, nobody brings God as much joy as you do. Because you're the light from within, from the deepest darkness. And the Alter says, appreciate that. Realize that. And you have to be happy that God is happy with you. Okay. Before we read this last passage, this last little piece of Tanya on page 252, I want to introduce it. In 1976, the Rebbe launched the Year of Education. This was a year that the Rebbe says that he personally and the Lubavitch movement is going to be focusing, campaigning for children's education. And so many of the Rebbe's educational programs for youth began in 1976. This is a year that the Rebbe wanted to revolutionize Jewish education in America and around the globe. A phenomenal piece of history, what the Rebbe did that year in 1976. Okay, 1975, 1976. Beginning Rosh Hashanah, approximately, of 1976. Or maybe it's actually 1975. Okay, could be beginning of the year, a year or two off. Okay. One of the things the Rebbe did that year was the Rebbe instituted 12 passages from Torah, like 12 one-liners from throughout Torah, from either the Bible or from our sages, from the Talmud, and 3 lines from Tanya. That the Rebbe wanted every single Jewish child should know these 12 little teachings, memorize them by heart, and that these are the very cornerstones. This is the foundation of Jewish belief and of Jewish life, what a Jew needs to know. Three lines the Rebbe chose from Tanya, one of them is right here. We're about to read it. This paragraph that we're about to read, besides the first 5 words, not the first 6 words, but right after that, 7 words actually, on page 252, is one of the 12 passages of Torah. And if you ever saw, if you came to Label's Upsharish, you saw he was saying he said Torah, Tziva, Lanu. It's a big idea that the Rebbe wanted that children should memorize these teachings. And the Rebbe felt these are the teachings that set a Jewish child on the path of Judaism and their understanding of what Judaism means. The Rebbe chose this line. Let's read it. Page 252. This is what the verse tells us. Israel should rejoice in his maker. It's a verse from Psalms. Israel, the Jewish people, should rejoice in his maker. What does that mean? Says the Alter Rebbe, it meaning every Jewish person ought to rejoice in God's joy, for he is rejoicing and celebrating his home in the lower world. A Jew needs to be happy in God's joy. A Jew needs to know that we cause Hashem nachas. God is celebrating because of us, and we owe it to ourselves to realize that, and that we should feel that satisfaction. We should rejoice in the fact that God is happy that we are creating a home for him. Okay. Very powerful message. Judaism is not just a religion of rituals. There's something very deeply personal happening over here. God gave us a mission. God gave us a purpose. And we cause God happiness. God really cares about us on an individual level. This is not talking about the Jewish people as a collective. God is happy about the Jewish people. You're a little Yidala. You do a mitzvah. You are studying Chassidus. You're studying Tanya. You're bringing God into our world, and you bring God joy. And the Alter says, know that. Realize that. Be proud of yourself. Know that you are accomplishing something so important. There's something so moving, deeply moving, personally touching and moving about what the Alter is teaching us over here. A Jew needs to know that we bring God nachas and joy, and we have to rejoice in that. Okay. Who is God happy about? Israel should rejoice in his maker. The Alter says, God does not rejoice about angels. God does not rejoice about souls in heaven, even though they look a lot prettier than we do. We're very flawed. Our version here on earth, the soul's version in a body is deeply flawed. It's horrible. This is an embarrassment. This is a shanda for what a soul should look like. But perfect souls don't give God any nachas. Perfect souls don't give God any joy. It's specifically us. The Alter says, look carefully at the verse. Israel should rejoice in his maker. Now the word maker, in Hebrew, it's bi'osav. Bi'osav. Like the word oseh shalom. Make peace. Maker. Osav. Now, by the way, the word osav, maker for God, is not the typical word we will use to describe God. If we want to describe God as a creator, we'll say creator. To call God a bore, a creator, that's a good word. Less often used, but still pretty often used, is yotzer, the former, meaning he forms things. That's okay, that's used a little bit more. But calling God a maker? That's pretty atypical. Who calls God maker? Osav. We never call God a maker. Why does this verse say Israel should rejoice in his maker? Why are we describing God with the word ba'osav, maker? The Alter says, I'll tell you why. Because the word ba'osav specifically refers to the way God makes the lowest level of reality. The world of asiya, the world of action. So what causes God joy? Specifically when he's the maker. Specifically his relationship with our lowest physical reality. It's the way human beings are it's the way souls are in bodies, on physical life, that brings God this joy. And it's all alluded to in the word ba'osav, in their maker, in his maker. That's what captures that. Let's read what the Alter says. That is why the word maker is used, because it alludes to our physical world, the world of real physical action. There you have it, right? In the Hebrew, you can see the connection a little bit more. Our world is called the world of asiya, osav. It's the same word. Salter says, what causes God joy? What are we rejoicing? Specifically that we are able to make God a home, be'osa, in the world of asiya, in the lowest reality. It's the way we are here in the darkness that brings God joy. It's not perfection that brings God joy. right? It's the light from within the pain, from within the darkness, from within the struggle. So the Alter says, look at the wording carefully. That's what causes joy. Ba'osav. And there's another point over here. The word ba'osav is in the plural form. Okay, so without getting into the complexity of the Hebrew grammar, which grammar is very nuanced and complex, and I don't want to bore you with the details. But also, there's another anomaly here. Besides calling God maker, which is, again, a very, very infrequent way to refer to God, the word maker itself is written in the plural form, which is also a little bit grammatically off. Why are we speaking here in the plural form about God? And the Alter Rebbe gives us a fascinating insight. Let's read. That's also why the verse says, okay, it got messed up in the PDF. We had it in the Hebrew, ba'osav, using the plural form. Why does it use the plural form? Because it is alluding to this physical world, which is called the domain of the many. Our physical world is called the domain of the many. This is where you have lots of stuff, plurality. Why? For it is full of the negative forces of Klipa and Sitra Achra that see themselves as divided mountain peaks. That's a quote from the Zohar. Separate and removed from God's oneness. What's the world we live in? The world we live in is not a world of oneness. We don't live in a world of harmony. We live in a world of fragmentation. We live in a world of division. Because we live in a dark world, because we live in a world of Klipa, which obscures God's reality, that also creates that this world is not a world of unity. It's not a world of harmony. It's not a world of oneness. It's not a world of singularity. It's a world of division, of fragmentation, where every single thing rises up, and in the words of the Zohar, as its own mountain peak. That's what a mountain does. A mountain separates itself from the rest of the landscape and points itself up into its own little bubble and says, I'm me, I'm big, I'm this, I'm my own peak. So in Kabbalah language, cryptically, how do we refer to that condition of a reality that just doesn't see itself as part of something larger and just digs in its heels in its own ego and breaks away from everybody else in its own sense of, I'm me, I'm my own thing, I'm looking out for myself, I'm in competition with you. That's what the darkness does. And that's why this world is called the domain of the many. This is not a world of singularity. This is not a world of sync. This is a world of just many, lots of competing elements. And that is why the verse uses the plural form, because it's referring to our world. When God is happy not from spiritual worlds, God is happy from within our divided world. This is the world which could give God joy. How? Concludes the Alter Rebbe, and through your experiencing faith, all this darkness is transformed to light. And from this domain of the many becomes a domain of the singular for his singular oneness. When we bring faith into our lives, we take a fragmented world and we start piecing it together again. We start making things work together again. Let's even just think about our lives. We live fragmented lives. We're being pulled in so many different directions. Faith has the effect of starting to synchronize life. It focuses life. Now everything of life starts coming together. It's part of one symphony. Everything is working together. We're taking from the many. We're taking a life which is all about the domain of the many. We're being pulled in millions of different directions, and we're going to make it into the domain of the singular for his singular oneness. So the Alter Rebbe says, experiencing faith, tapping into our faith, is not just a way to elevate our experience of life. It's not just a way to make a home for God, which is very satisfying because we know we're fulfilling our purpose, but we bring God joy. Why we bring God joy? Because there's a space in reality. We live in that space, which is a dark and confusing place. And because it's so dark and confusing, there's so much fragmentation, and there's so much competition, and there's simply a breakdown of the system. And a Jew is fixing that. This is really the spirituality of Tikkun Olam. We bring God back into the picture. and we're starting to heal the world. We're taking that darkness and now we're starting to make sense of it. We're taking all these broken, shattered pieces and we're starting to bring it all together. And that all happens within our lives. We have the ability to start healing the world by healing our own life, by healing our own broken lives, by healing a life which is pulled in millions of different directions, so much going on, competing forces, and we could take our faith of God to bring clarity and direction and harmony within our lives. When we do that, not only does our life get better, but this is what causes God the most joy. And we need to know that we are causing God. We're making God be so happy, and we should rejoice in that, in his joy. And dear friends, that is chapter 33. And this is what the Rebbe told this David Tenenhaus. Peretz Muchkin has an old dirty jacket. Peretz Muchkin doesn't really have that much money to his name. But he's not living in a world of darkness. He's living in a world of light. He's not living in a world of fragmentation. He's living in a world of unity, of harmony. And Marilyn Monroe has a lot of money, has lots of opportunities, and can rub shoulders with everybody, all the great people. But guess what? She's living in a world of darkness. She's living in a broken world. And what we have the opportunity, the gift of faith is, the gift of being a Jew means that we could put ourselves, we could create light, we could create unity, and it all begins within ourselves. And if we have it within ourselves, we could share it with the rest of the world. And that's where we're going to be getting to. Dear friends, chapter 33 in the books. Next week, let's do class. Right after Rosh Hashanah, between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. When's a better opportunity to study Tanya than between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? Next week, Monday, we're going to be studying. The next week, though, and the next week, probably not. Getting ready for the holiday. But next week, we'll study. And then after Sukkot and Simchas Torah, we'll get back on it. Dear friends, L'chaim, L'chaim. I want to wish you all a wonderful evening. We'll see you all next time.